Welcome back, everybody. We are here at the offices of Tennessee State Soccer Association here in Nashville. We are pleased to have Memphis Soccer's own JJ Greer here with us. We're ready for part 2 of our interview with JJ. We talked about you growing up, how your sister was a big influence, and she and her friends playing to kind of get you into the game, and then you fell in love with playing, played a couple of sports growing up, were a really accomplished basketball player as well, ultimately settled on soccer, and now you've made it, got a scholarship, your junior year scholarship offer.
Yep.
Committed, that kind of took a little pressure off, really allowed you to play free, and now you're stepping into the University of Memphis as a freshman. And would like to kind of this part 2 take you through that journey, or help take us through that journey, transitioning to the college level, and then ultimately as that college career concluded, what it's like to finally sign a contract to play as a pro. So that's something not a lot of people get an opportunity to do. But let's start at the University of Memphis. You know the coach. You guys have an established relationship with Coach Richie Grant. Tell us about getting to the University of Memphis, how you managed to handle academics and really high-level Division I men's soccer all at the same time.
Yeah. I think there was a huge learning curve in terms of playing at that level because – I mean, at any level in college, and in particular, Division I men's college soccer, it's an extremely physical game. As you know, Brian, that's just the nature of the game in college soccer, especially then. Of course, you have your technical players that are really good, but it's really important to have that physical aspect. And when I first got there, being from Memphis, luckily, I was able to train with them during that summer. There was a couple of guys that stuck around to lift weights and kind of do some off-season workout kind of thing, because it wasn't organized. It's kind of a dead period. You can't do that.
Sure.
So we would kind of have the guys that were in town, we would do our
captain's
thing.
practices.
Exactly, right. And that was the huge learning curve, and I'm so glad that I did that because when we would play small-sided games, 3v3, things of that nature, I mean, I was just winded. It's hot. It's August, July in Memphis, like muggy. And these guys are flying, man. The ball's moving fast. And I just I've always been a pretty skillful player, but, I was tired, so sloppy, giving away passes, guys were muscling me off the ball. And I was like, man, am I good enough to do this? Seriously, there's the first few weeks, I just was getting crushed, I felt like. But then, of course, kept working out, stayed in the gym. Kept running and playing with those guys. And then by the end of the summer, I was doing well, and started maybe, excel a little bit. And then by the time the season started, we started actual preseason, I was that much further ahead than I would have been. It would have been way more difficult. So
was there a guy or two of those older players who were around who really kind of made an impact on you and let you know, hey, look, this is what you need to be prepared for when August starts and we get to preseason?
Yeah, so I mean, I was playing. Rick Allman was one of the guys. He was one of the captains of the team, actually. Really, really good player. I think that year he might have gotten a second or third team all conference.
Wow.
Just a really good player from Texas. Ryan Rubel, Eli. So those guys, they weren't guys like rah guys like that, but it was just by their play. They showed me I need to catch up. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so it wasn't you need to get in shape. It was just this is the standard.
Leading by example.
They were leading by example, which is the best. That's how I learned best. Somebody tells me, hey, you did. I'm like, oh, okay. But no, it was super effective just by just them leading by example and showing what the standard of play was.
Right.
Yeah.
And so you're jumping into, thankfully, your high school, Christian Brothers, is notorious not just for good soccer, but also for preparing kids for college. It's very much a college prepared. So you probably were as prepared as you could be academically, but all of a sudden now, after that hard summer of training, you're jumping into, to go into class and doing all those things you have to do, the requirements, and probably study halls and things like that as a Division I athlete. And you're jumping into Conference USA, which is a really terrific soccer conference. How did you find the level once you guys got through preseason and that difficulty to the matches? What was that like?
Yeah. So, I mean, on the school part, like you said, Christian Brothers definitely prepared me from that standpoint. I was more than ready academically. It was more, like you said, just balancing the schedule because it's a full workload training, on the field, and then in school you just have to balance, and you have a lot more freedom. So it's I can do what I want, right? That's what you think. That's the illusion. That's the illusion that you can do what you want. But it ended up, a few bumps and bruises, but we got those figured out. In terms of the competition, like you said, Conference USA it's a beast. It's a tough conference. And then it later transformed to AAC, which was also a tough conference. But we had teams, Tulsa University and Alabama Birmingham and Southern Methodist University, SMU. These are really top teams. Like, these guys are good. And a lot of them, well, I won't say a lot. I mean, there's a few that I grew up playing ODP against. And, they're on the regional teams and some national teams. And that's just my age. The guys that came before them that were upper class, they had done those same things, right? So it was just we would always do really well our first few non-conference games. Against good teams, we would do well. And then we hit conference, and it just is so much tougher. So every single game was just a battle.
Yeah, and so as you go through there, you also had some ups and downs in terms of your health. So really, you're growing up as an 18-year-old, you're invincible, and nothing can happen. But all of a sudden, through your college career, you had certainly some highlights, and Memphis had a good run while you were there. But also there were some difficulties. You've had a couple of injuries that you suffered through while you were in college. How did that play a part in your journey through college? Soccer playing, but also deciding on your future on pursuing playing as a professional.
No, the injury piece was very tough. You learn a lot about yourself during that time. And I'd never really been injured in a serious way before. A few, knocks and bumps, but nothing too crazy. And so after my junior year, I broke my foot. And my junior year was a really good year. We had our best year yet. I think we had like 11 or 12 wins. And I got all conference, as a defender. I made the move back to defense. And then so I'm like, all right, let's go flying. And actually got an invite to play for Portland Timbers U23 team in the summer. So, that was awesome. And then my foot started really bothering me during the spring season of, this would have been 2011. And it just kept bothering me. Finally, I went in, got an x-ray and, got the bad news, it's broken. Your foot's broken. You can't play. I'm like, oh man, right? I was about to go to Portland and with another teammate of mine, Mark Sherrod, who was Memphis's best player. That's a fact. That's not an argument. He's broken all the records. Big shout out to Mark. And he went there and did great things. But yeah, we were making all these plans. We're going to go up there together, and they had an apartment for us and everything. And it's going to be an awesome summer. We're going to play up in Portland and do great things, and then kick off from there. But then got this terrible news that my foot's broken. So I was like, oh, all right, well, you just gotta handle it and deal with it. And at the time, you doesn't really sink in. But had surgery on it, got it fixed, and then tried to come back and be ready for, the fall season. And then foot starts bothering me again 3 games into the year, and go back to the doctor, and then it's broken again. And then so I had to redshirt that year. And so that was tough. Learned a lot about that.
Well, and it's really because of the path that you sort of set yourself on by, again, coming in as an attacking player. We just glossed over that. That's not easy to do. To come in as an attacking player, go into a really competitive conference, and then have to change positions. So your natural inclinations, you've always played. In our game, everybody has to attack and everybody has to defend in the modern game. But you primarily focused on attacking.
Oh, yeah.
So now all of a sudden you've had to make that change. But you've done it and you've excelled by it. You've made all conference. You put yourself on a track where there's a lot of guys who got that invite from Portland. Not a lot of guys got that invite, first of all, but a lot of those that did were sort of on a path to, you'd seen from the years before, hey, guys that go here and do well there's a path for them to make it on into the professional game. So you're setting yourself up and moving and progressing, not just existing as a college soccer player, but excelling. And that path, it's still going a step up and a step up and a step up, and now all of a sudden it's a step back. And then to come back around and 3 games in, have to redshirt that year, now another step back. Just as a young person, that's a real, beginning to face a real adversity and how that could impact your career for maybe one of the first times in your life as a 20, 21-year-old guy. How did you, what were the supports you leaned on at that point to try and get yourself through there, both mentally and physically?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that it was a tough time. I mean, even definitely started getting down, couldn't play. I think, grades start slipping a little bit just because you're in a weird headspace, and the courses were getting a little tougher because you're getting towards the end of your, major, but still, you're just in a tough spot. But no, I certainly leaned on, the players on the team trying to encourage me, although they're training and I'm on the sideline doing whatever, doing rehab, basically alone, maybe 1 or 2 other guys in there. But no, I really leaned on. She was my girlfriend at the time, but my current wife now, Stephanie Greer, she just helped me a lot and kept me calm and talked to me and stayed upbeat. My parents, for sure, just kept me locked in. Make sure I'm still going to class, getting schoolwork done. Of course, we had academic advisors for that too, and they're great. But yeah, it's just really just being focused during that time, because when you're injured, a lot of it you're alone. You're having to do all your rehab basically, by yourself. You and the athletic trainer become the best of friends, right?
Well, and it's also, but I think back to one of the things you said in part one where you talked about your mom and your dad too, but your mom was kind of the taskmaster when it came to education. And you always had a mind for there was going to be an end of your playing career. Well, as much as you focused on it and accomplished it, we'll get to there, but like you always had an idea that at some point that career was going to end and you were going to have a long life to continue to be, productive and happy and accomplishing things. So, it can be a challenge to get through those times, but I just can't help but think that having that, that goal, knowing it wasn't just about pro soccer or bus for you. This was a part of an overall process.
Oh yeah, it was certainly a part of an overall process, just to finishing, my degree and playing soccer collegiately for the length of time being there. That was, a big accomplishment. And that was something that I always wanted to do. I wanted to play college soccer, and I did want to play pro. And that was something that helped push me through as well, the end goal. Like you said, it wasn't, because I wanted to keep playing after college, and I knew that. That's what I wanted to do since I was in, like second grade.
And it helped to keep you motivated.
Oh, of course.
So you come out of this heartbreak, and now a double. So you break your foot in the spring, you break it again in the fall. That's a washout. So you have to miss that season, come back probably the next spring and start to get ready to play. And now you've got your senior season coming up. So take us through that trip through maybe your senior season, and then you're finding your way to that goal of becoming a pro.
Yeah. So I coming back from injury, it was more like basically almost the end of spring season. Okay. Just because we were super cautious at that time, didn't want the same thing happen.
Yeah, it already happened twice now.
Yeah, already happened twice, so it was much slower recovery. And then, I actually, this time I called Portland. I was like, hey, do I still have a spot? They were like, they were like, well, are you healthy? And I was like, yeah, I'm trying to get that way. And so basically, we were able to find, they were like, well, we don't have a place for you, this time. You'd have to find your own spot, kind of a thing. And then ended up getting a host family situated, a nice German host family in Beaverton, Oregon. It's right down the street from Nike headquarters, so that was cool. So ended up getting that sorted. So I was like, man, if I just need to get there and, just get a shot, right, on the field. Because it's a lot different this time. I've been out a whole year, and before I was wanted, now I was more like trying to, knock on doors to get into places. Finally was able to, recover, and then ended up getting on the field and playing a decent number of games, and we got pretty far. And then so that was different, having to kind of fight through some adversity and really kind of me knocking on doors and reaching out to people. So that was great, and then went on into senior season and had an okay season. Started off strong and kind of had a little knee thing, but just kind of fought through. College season's so short. If you can't really, it's not like you can sit out 3-4 games, right?
Nobody's at 100% after about September 1st.
Exactly, yeah, or 3 or 4 weeks, because that could be 6 games. Yeah, So I had to fight through the adversity and kind of forget about all the other stuff, whatever awards or accomplishments, and really kind of refocus. Yeah.
And so you find your way through your senior season. Season comes to an end. Unfortunately, you guys. How'd that season end? Your final.
Yeah, it wasn't a bad season. I think we might have managed to get double-digit wins, like 10 wins, and then we never made it past the first round of the conference tournament. There was the AAC at the time, and we lost to UCF, Central Florida, again in overtime. They beat us down there in overtime. Of course, college soccer is sudden death overtime. So that was tough, but it was a good season.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you make it to the postseason, again, in anything, and to have gotten into overtime, and UCF's again another traditional powerful program. So now your college career's ended. now you've had this dream since you've been in second grade.
Yeah.
For 15 years now, this is what you've been dreaming of. How did that journey go from ending your college season to then signing a pro contract?
Oh man, that was a wild ride. I was like, okay, what's next? Because I had actually already graduated in the spring, but I knew I wanted to play pro soccer, and I had to actually educate myself on throughout the year, and then especially after I was done with the senior season, redshirt senior season, on what teams were available, because MLS wasn't really going to be an option, just because it was an okay year, and I was kind of. Maybe the year before, if I would have kept playing, maybe.
Maybe you get a combine invite.
Yeah.
The combine's getting less and less important in MLS.
Yeah.
But back then it was sort of like if the guys who were going to get drafted in the MLS were going to get invited to the combine. And coming off your junior year and all conference, without the injury and a good season with Portland, that's something you might have been on track.
Maybe it might have been on more people's radars, but at this point, definitely not. So it was going to have to be me once again knocking on doors. So, I research, once again, speaking with, my mom and Coach Grant and Coach Glazer especially, who played a little bit, I believe, in USL or A-League or one of the leagues, maybe both. Speaking with them on what the options are. And so I had to research literally every team that was in USL Pro at the time. And I just...
Without an agent.
I spoke with an agent a little bit, but... he wasn't really worried about me. He was like, gave me some, I got some good advice from some agents, but nobody that was willing to take me on, which is fine. Just keep plugging away, keep knocking on doors. And so I was my own agent. And so I, went on every team's website, got all the coaches' emails, and just, sent email to all of them. Got highlight video, made. Sent that to everybody. I don't know if I mailed it or maybe I think I did on YouTube. I think YouTube was definitely a thing, but I'm not that old.
That stung a little bit, but we'll keep going.
Sorry, Brian.
It's good. So you send out, but you're the one banging on these doors. People aren't knocking down your door.
No.
Agents, again, giving you some good advice, but like you're the leader of this. You've taken. I talk to the kids in ODP about this all the time. You've got to take charge of your development.
Oh yeah.
If you're waiting for your parents to make sure your bag's packed right or whatever, this is a perfect example at this crucial transition, like it was from high school to college. Now from college to being a pro, and you've got to take this. I love this story. Like you're now in charge of it. How did you get that first invite to get to that first camp to then earn that first contract?
Absolutely. So I was, I sending emails to all the coaches, and this is a while ago, so I don't know how many might have responded. Some might have said, come to this open trial, come to that open trial. And of course, you got to somewhat be a little careful about that because sometimes they can be money grabs, so to speak. Although I think, you just never know. If it's an open trial, you can get some really good college soccer players. You can get some people that aren't so great, right? That are trying to live the dream, which that's fine. So eventually, at this point, they still had the USL Pro Combine. And so I think I had to submit an application for that to hopefully be considered to be invited. So I did that, and then luckily I was invited. In the combine, it was like a couple $100. Like I had to pay to go there. It wasn't crazy expensive at all. Like it was actually very reasonably priced, and it was at IMG Academy. So I went there in the spring of 2014. I think it was February, and went down there. There's like 4 games in 2 days or something crazy like that. Game in the morning, game at night. No, I take that back. I think they kept it at 1 game a day, but it was still it was back-to-back days.
Right, very intense.
Oh, very intense.
A lot on the line.
Very intense, and all of us I think we had 1 or 2 training sessions, and nobody knew anybody. Right. Maybe it's a couple guys you might have grown up with or seen in college soccer, but for the most part, it was very just thrown together, right?
Right.
And so I had a couple good games, and then there's one coach from the Charlotte Eagles, Steve Shack, came and approached me after one of the games. And just was asking about me, and he knew Dave Dixon, who I played for at Mississippi Brio, PDL, that was another really strong PDL program. And I actually didn't get to play that much on that team, when I was younger, but it was still a great team to be a part of. So ended up speaking with them, and then afterward got a contract offer. from that. So that was the only thing I had, so I took it.
Yes, I will have that.
Yeah, exactly. Then, like, you know, they were like, "This is the amount of money. It's not much at all,
Right.
and there's not really any negotiation that we do." I was like, "Okay."
So
I'll do it.
You at this point still single, not married to your wife?
So not married yet, but I had, you know, the plan in my head is like, if I can get, you know, a contract, you know, we'll get married, you know. I'll pop the question. So we actually flew back from Bradenton, Florida to IMG, got back. She picked me up from the airport that night, and then I already had a ring and everything.
Man.
Yeah. So already had the ring. I think it was in my room or something, and she was in town. And then so went and got the ring and went to the bathroom for a second just to, I don't know, look at myself one last time. Called her in there and then, you know, popped the question. So and she said
awesome.
yes, and it was a big surprise. So
Well,
there's no plan. I'm not a big, you know, I'm not a big romantic planner guy. I was like, I just do it.
And now 4 kids later, JJ and his wife have, the oldest is 4,
Yep.
and then they have triplets.
Yep.
So his wife is a saint, clearly.
Oh, my gosh.
So now you guys start this journey together,
Yeah.
and you head to Charlotte.
Yep.
So Charlotte's your first stop. Where, took us just, because I do want to, we get sort of through to, ultimately you got to end your career playing with one of your idols. So I don't want to gloss over. Like, to me, this is all super interesting. We can do 10 parts on this.
Yeah.
But I'm a soccer nerd, and everybody out there may not be. So through this journey, you made it. You've gotten a pro contract. You go from Charlotte. Ultimately, you end up in Phoenix.
Yep.
Playing with Didier Drogba, one of the guys you mentioned, that's one of your Chelsea heroes.
Yeah.
So again, and we don't need to rush through it, but like, tell us about that journey, and then any impacts you sort of felt, sort of in the bigger scheme of the world and socially, as you made this journey now as a professional athlete.
Yeah. No, of course. Yeah. So year in Charlotte, 2 years in Colorado Springs, and then went to Phoenix. And Phoenix, the club. Was going through a big rebrand at the time. They used to be Arizona United, and then they rebranded to Phoenix Rising, as there was a push to go MLS eventually, and I believe they're still trying to do that. So hopefully that can happen one day. So yeah, signed for Phoenix, and you know, there's all these rumblings that they're signing these, you know, big time players. And I'm like, man, we'll see, right? You always hear a lot of different things. So I'm kind of like, whatever, you know, we'll see. But sure enough, you know, they signed Sean Wright Phillips,
another guy who played for Chelsea.
Guy who played for Chelsea, and I grew up watching him on Chelsea and Manchester City when he was, you know, big time, and played with some other players like Jordan Stewart, who played in the Premier League and the Championship and MLS for a couple years, and Peter Ramage, who played for Newcastle, and Omar Bravo, who was big time, you know, Mexican superstar for the national team and various clubs in Mexico and in Spain. But then, of course, you know, there's this big time rumor that like the club might sign Didier Drogba, and I was like, no, I mean, no, come on now. Sure enough, you know, a week or two later, he comes in our locker room, and we signed him. You know, the club signed him, and that was just, I mean, that was, you know, I'm typically not don't get starstruck or whatever. But that was definitely like, you know, wow, like, you know, this is, you know, I've made it.
But here, now, and talk about coming full circle. You talk about your folks and your sister sitting down and watching Chelsea matches when you were a kid, and how you were kind of drawn to them because of some of these guys, some of those men of color who were out and excelling at the highest level. And now you're sitting in a locker room and competing out on the pitch, both with them for time and then with them, you know, against opponents in the league.
Oh, of course.
That's got to just be surreal.
Oh, no. I mean, it was huge because, you know, like I said earlier, like you said, like, that was my team because, you know, all the black players, you know, I didn't see a lot of that, and, you know, how they all got along so well, black and white players playing together. You know, Frank Lampard in there as well with, you know, Claude Makelele and John Obi Mikel and, you know, Nicholas and I mean, it was just awesome. Petr Cech and, you know, these great players just all playing together and winning. You know, winning. I'm sorry, Brian.
Man, you guys were really good.
You know?
a lot of winning.
We won a lot.
The Prawn Sandwich Brigade back then.
But just you know, so that was just awesome. That was just awesome to see. And then, of course, the year before, when I was in Colorado Springs, I read, you know, Didier's book, and he. I mean, not obviously we know he's a great player, but he helped stop a civil war in his country, on the Ivory Coast, which is
it's
pretty
a great story for those out there who haven't heard about Didier Drogba's story or read his book. He has quite a story to tell, and it also wasn't an easy trajectory from him.
Yeah.
He wasn't that kid that got signed at 16 like Wayne Rooney and just had this easy path. And again, Wayne Rooney was a terrific player,
of course,
and like earned all those things with hard work and quality play. But Drogba had a challenging set. That's a whole. We could do a whole Didier Drogba thing.
Right.
But he was an inspiration to you the year before.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden he's a teammate.
Yeah, from a different perspective. After obviously I loved him as a player, but read his book, got it from a different perspective, and of course, like his second day training, I was like, hey, I liked your book. He's like, thank you.
You have any autograph it, kid?
Yeah, I know, right? I waited for that for later. I didn't get the book signed. I should have done that, but I
should have gotten the
definitely
book
had a couple of Chelsea kids signed. I got one in my office actually.
Wow.
No, he was he's a great guy and just a leader.
But for a guy, again, as a leader, to take that off of soccer. So now you've been through this experience. We've talked about you going from Christian Brothers High School to the University of Memphis to now a couple of different professional organizations, now to your third. And so let's do come back in the context of Didier Drogba, in the context of the civil war in his country, to talk about how have your experiences at this point has the racial conversation become, it's not a part of the national conversation that much in 2017 and 2018. How is your being a black man playing in this sport that across our country is predominantly an upper middle class and to this point it's predominantly a white sport in a lot of parts of our country and certainly in our state. And I'm not trying to create a situation where there wasn't one. What was that experience like for you?
Yeah, no, I mean, for me that experience wasn't, I definitely don't have any crazy stories. It was in 99.9% positive, and of course I was just always focused on playing. I'm not sure if, I'd be interested to ask, my mom or my dad, if they ever really experienced anything on the sidelines, some comments. They might have gotten some interesting, maybe offhand comments, but, I was always in the field and I was always, so focused just on playing and being the best that.
And that's really encouraging for me to hear that. I mean, we're of a similar generation, but you're a younger guy than me, and that you could have come up through the 90s, and then your playing career through the 2000s and through the late 2010s in the teens, and that there wasn't really a big negative impact on you. I feel like that's progress, and I'm hopeful for that progress and maybe where it's leading us into the future.
Of course. No, I went to mostly white school, growing up. So, that wasn't, it was interesting. I went through mostly white school and then soccer played with, mostly white kids, a couple of maybe Asian kids, a couple black kids sprinkled in, with soccer. And then with basketball, our teams were like all black. So it was just kind of, interesting, how that was just an interesting dynamic, right? And you just kind of, being young, growing up in the South, and in Memphis, you just kind of sometimes accept those things. You don't really realize any better until you get older. It's like, it should or it could be different. Why is it like this, right?
Right.
And then at Christian Brothers, we were kind of a different team because we had 5 or 6 black kids, on the team that we were all starting and good. So that was kind of and we never really talked about it that much, but
right.
We definitely were, that was something that we were proud of and that we were good. And we showing people that we could, we could ball, we could play. And I think some people did, other people around the state kind of did, took notice of that. So that was kind of an interesting thing. But, overall growing up, I saw soccer, as you did, as the world's game and not a white sport. I would hear sometimes, I guess soccer is a white sport and things of that nature. But, I'm looking on TV at, around the world at these guys playing and girls playing, and like it's not at all. It's the exact opposite. It's everybody's sport.
Right.
Everybody's playing, and that's always been my attitude. And I think, even our national team, I feel like you're starting to see more reflection of that. Of course, we're getting guys from all over the world and everything, but I think you're starting to see a reflection of more diversity, in the squad and in the younger squad, of course. So, I think there's really exciting times, moving forward for Tennessee soccer and the country.
Yeah, no, I think that's great, and we're going to use that as a segue. So, really, so far in part one, we get to talk about JJ growing up and making his decision to move on to Memphis. In part two, here we've talked about his transition from being a now a college player, a successful all-conference competitor, and now on to being a pro and a seasoned pro. And now, JJ's still a very young man, still hasn't hit 30 yet. Oh, I remember those days. But he's now made a transition and a choice to step away and to retire as a player, but now still be involved in the game. And so when we come back, we're going to talk about JJ's transition off the pitch and into the broadcast booth and the other things he's doing, and also a little bit about what his hopes and dreams are for the future of soccer. So come back and join us for part 3 of TSSA Talks.